For over 100 years, no ship had entered human space and returned, not one. The other species of the galaxy whispered about it behind closed doors, even though no one dared to speak loudly because the fear was still alive, still real, even after all this time, long ago, before the silence. Humans had been everywhere, trading, exploring, fighting wars, making allies. Sometimes making enemies too. They had spread fast across the stars, faster than anyone expected, faster than most were comfortable with, and then, without warning, they stopped. They vanished behind their borders, shut down their spaceports, pulled back every ambassador. Every ship, every probe, they called it the retreat. But no one knew why it happened. The Galactic Council sent messages, sent envoys, even begged for a reply, but human space stayed quiet. No answers came. Then the first alien ship went in. It was a simple scout vessel from the colony. Curious and brave, they crossed the invisible border and disappeared. No signal, no trace. Others followed in the years after explorers, smugglers, pirates, even full warships. Some went in by mistake, others by pride. All were lost, and so the Council declared human space a no-entry zone, the stars within. That area became known as the Silent Zone. Even the bravest captains refused to fly near it. Even pirate lords avoided it. Even bounty hunters turned away when they saw its edge glowing red on their maps. But the fear only grew stronger with time, because the mystery stayed unanswered. Were the humans still alive? Were they watching? Were they planning something? No one knew, and that's what made it worse. Then came the Zarnian scout ship. One of the newer models, fast, quiet, cloaked in high-tech shielding, invisible to most sensors. Captain Thal was in command, a proud young officer with more ambition than caution. He believed the legends were just that, legends. He wanted to prove the galaxy wrong. He believed he could go in, gather data, and come out a hero. He crossed the border at the edge of the silent sector, his crew tense but silent, all systems running. Smooth, no resistance, no signals, just emptiness. For the first hour, nothing happened. Thal joked about ghosts, laughed at the fear. His crew tried to relax. The ship continued deeper into the zone, passing through a dead system with burnt-out suns and shattered moons, as if something had crushed them long ago. The crew started to whisper, had a war happened here? There were no signs of life, no signs of machines, no energy readings, just cold silence. Then the lights flickered. Just once. They came back on in seconds. But the temperature inside the ship had dropped. The engineer said the systems were fine. But his hands were shaking. On the main screen, the stars started to shift. Like static. Like they weren't real. Then the radio came alive, not with human speech, not even alien sounds, but something else. It was a recording. Something old. Something familiar and wrong at the same time. It was the voice of Thal's mother, but she had died years ago. Then another crew member heard her brother's voice. Another heard her own voice. Whispering secrets she never told anyone. They all stared at each other, frozen in place. Dahl tried to turn the ship around, but the controls no longer responded. The engines were still running, but the ship didn't move. Outside, the stars started to fade. One by one, the galaxy was disappearing from the viewports. Thal ordered a distress signal, but nothing transmitted. The signal was swallowed in silence. Then the crew began to scream. One by one, they collapsed. Holding their heads, crying out in voices that weren't their own. Some saw shadows in the hallway. Some saw bright lights. Some heard music from there. Childhood, some heard nothing at all, but they were all afraid. Thal stood alone at the bridge, sweating, shaking, calling out to anything. Anyone, even the humans, but no one came, no answer, no attack, no warning, just silence. And then, Everything stopped. The ship vanished from sensors, vanished from space. No explosion, no trail, just gone. Another lost soul in the silent zone. The Galactic Council received the last log entry from Thal's ship 3 weeks later. Had no timestamp. No data, just one line of text. It said, "We are not alone. But we are not welcome." After that, fear turned into law. A new order was passed: no ship, no drone. Not even a satellite was allowed within human space. Anyone who disobeyed would be labeled insane, and still, behind that border of stars, human space remained quiet, too quiet. Some believed the humans had all died long ago. Others believed they had become something else, something no longer human. But everyone agreed on one thing: human space was not empty. It was watching, waiting. And no one wanted to find out what would happen if it ever opened its eyes again. The Galactic Council sat in a darkened chamber, deep inside the floating citadel of Ethereum Prime. Dozens of species were present, each one quiet, each one worried. Their faces showed fear, confusion, and frustration. They were leaders, generals, scientists, but today, they were just scared. The newest incident had shaken them all. The Zarnian scout ship, gone without a trace. Another ship swallowed by the humans' dead zone. Some blamed the ship's captain, some blamed faulty navigation. But most knew better. This was no accident. This was a pattern. 100 years of silence had not calmed the fear. It had only made it worse. The chairman of the council, a tall feathered being called Orin 5, finally stood and spoke. His voice echoed in the chamber. Cold and heavy. "No more guesses," he said. "No more lost ships. No more silence." He proposed a formal declaration: human space would now be known as a zone of fear. Not a myth, not a mystery, but a confirmed danger. A red line was drawn across the star maps. Glowing and blinking, everyone knew what it meant: do not cross. Ever. Not for trade, not for science, not even by mistake. That night, every screen across the galaxy updated. Warning signs flashed on navigation panels. Patrol beacons were placed along the invisible border. Drones floated there, watching, but never daring to drift in. Still, not everyone agreed with this decision, far from the main worlds. In a lonely archive tower on Varnac 6, a young alien historian watched the news unfold. His name was Victor. And he didn't believe in fear, he believed in knowledge. He was not tall, not strong, and certainly not important. But he was curious, dangerously curious. To him, human space wasn't a threat, it was a mystery begging to be solved. He believed the galaxy had made a mistake. That the humans weren't monsters, but maybe just misunderstood. Victor had studied old records, grainy footage of human colonies, fragments of old Earth broadcasts, bits of data from long-abandoned trade logs. He had listened to ancient voices from before the silence. Voices that laughed, debated, even cried. They sounded human. They sounded like people. He read about how humans once helped during the Plague Wars, how they stood beside the Grani during the tidal crisis, how they offered aid when no one else did. Then came the retreat, and after that, nothing. No one knew why. And that was what burned inside Victor's mind like fire. He stared at the red border on his screen, blinking like a warning light. Everyone else saw danger, but he saw a door. One that needed opening. Victor made a decision that night. One that would change everything. He packed a bag, loaded up old charts, and took a ship, not a warship, not a research cruiser, just a small explorer vessel from the Academy's museum wing. Rusty, but still flying, it was called Curiosity. A fitting name, he thought. He told no one where he was going. He launched from Varnac 6 in the middle of the night. When the stars were silent and the skies were calm, his hands trembled as he activated the engines. But his heart beat faster from excitement, not fear. He flew past the patrols without being noticed. His ship was too old to register on modern scanners. Its stealth systems were ancient, but still useful. Within 2 days, he saw the border. It was just space cold and empty, stars blinking like normal. Nothing dangerous, nothing strange, but the moment he crossed the invisible line. His ship's screen flickered. The lights dimmed for a second, then came back. Nothing else happened. He waited, still nothing. Maybe it really is just space. He said to himself with a nervous laugh, but deep down he knew that wasn't true. He flew deeper. Hours passed, then a full day. Still no sign of life. No radio signal, no distress calls. No defense systems, just silence. Then he found something. A floating station, rusted, broken, spinning slowly. It wasn't human-made. It was a Yekari outpost from 50 years ago. According to his maps, it had been one of the last ships to enter this zone. No one had seen it since Victor docked with caution. Stepping inside the silent halls, dust floated through the air like ancient ghosts. His boots echoed on the metal floor. The walls were covered in scratches as if someone tried to claw their way out. He found the crew logs, cracked open the control panel, and powered it up using a portable generator. The first few recordings were normal scientific reports, food inventory. Then came strange notes. "Dreams again," one voice said. "I heard my mother calling me." "She's been dead for years," another said. "We saw lights outside the window last night, like ships, but when we looked again, they were gone." And then silence. No final message, no goodbye. Just a log that ended mid-sentence. Victor stood in the dark, surrounded by static screens and cold walls. He heard a sound behind him, soft. Like a whisper, he spun around. Nothing. But when he turned back to the screen, a message had appeared, one that hadn't been there before. "Why are you here?" His heart froze. He hadn't typed anything. His hands began to shake. The message blinked once, then vanished. That night, Victor sat in his ship, staring at the stars outside the window. But they looked different, like they were watching him. He knew he had already gone too far. But he also knew he couldn't stop now. He had to know the truth, even if it cost him everything. Victor didn't sleep that night, even with the lights on, even with the doors locked. He kept hearing sounds, small clicks, soft taps, like someone walking just outside the ship. But every time he looked, no one was there. The floating station. Behind him was dark again, lifeless, like it had never been powered at all. This strange message had disappeared from the console, but it still burned in his memory. "Why are you here?" The question didn't feel like a threat, but more like a test. He checked the logs again, hoping he had missed something. He scanned every recording, read every line, trying to find an answer. But the last crew had simply faded away. Their final entries full of fear, confusion, and things that didn't make sense. They wrote about dreams, about voices that knew their names, about shadows that stood at the foot of their beds, about music that played from nowhere, soft lullabies they remembered from childhood. One log said, "The stars are whispering too." "Me," another said. "Something is watching, something old, something waiting." Victor felt a chill as he read those lines, because now he had heard the same whispers too. He decided to go deeper. He left the station behind and piloted Curiosity further into human space. Systems began to behave strangely. His maps started glitching. Navigation lights blinked at random. The stars outside started to look wrong, as if they were shifting, slowly changing positions when he wasn't looking, but he couldn't turn back. He passed through a strange dust field. Glowing faintly blue, it didn't show on any scanners, yet his ship drifted through it like a fog. Soft lights danced across the windows like fireflies, then vanished when he tried to record them. Then came the voices, not loud, not scary at first. Just soft and calm, they whispered things from his childhood, phrases his parents used. A song he hadn't heard in decades. his old teacher's voice calling his name. At first, he thought he was imagining it, but when he turned on the recorder, it picked up nothing, just static. He wasn't hearing them with his ears. They were inside. His mind, Victor activated the ship's AI assistant, hoping for some logic. But the AI began repeating a strange phrase. "They are watching," it said. But not with eyes. He tried to shut it off, but the AI kept restarting. "They remember," it whispered. "They never forget." Then all screens on the ship went black, just for a second, when they returned. A new star system appeared ahead. It wasn't on any known chart. The stars were colder here, dimmer, but something about the place pulled him in. A large planet floated in the center, wrapped in thick gray clouds, orbiting a dying sun. Victor couldn't resist. He brought the ship into orbit and scanned the surface. It showed ruined sentient cities buried in dust, towers cracked in half, and structures made of metal that shimmered with unknown energy. He found a spot to land. As he stepped out, he felt the air shift. The wind wasn't natural, it moved with rhythm, like it was breathing. The ruins were huge, far older than anything he had seen. And even though the place looked dead, he felt like he was being watched from every angle. He entered a broken dome. Inside were statues not of humans, but of something else. Strange creatures with no faces, long arms and wings made of light. Beneath one statue, he saw human writing, carved roughly into the stone. It said, "They showed us how to end war by ending time." He didn't understand what that meant, but before he could think more, he heard footsteps, real ones, slow, heavy. Coming from behind the wall, he turned fast, weapon drawn. No one was there, but the footsteps didn't stop. They passed by him without a body, echoing off stone and metal, like someone invisible was walking through the ruins beside him. Then came another message, this time, not on a screen, not spoken, but directly into his thoughts. "You are curious. You are alone. You may go deeper." He stumbled back, shaking. The message wasn't in words exactly. It felt like someone pressing ideas into his brain. It didn't hurt, but it felt wrong, like a door had opened. Inside his head that should have stayed locked, he ran back to the ship, locked every door, activated every defense system, but nothing followed him. Still, he felt that something had changed. His ship systems were working again. But now they were different, faster, smarter. Like someone had upgraded them without touching them. He sat in the pilot's seat, staring at his reflection in the glass. For a second, he thought his eyes glowed. Only for a moment, then it was gone. He launched from the surface, not sure if he was escaping or being allowed to leave. As the ship rose, he saw something far in the distance above the clouds, floating high in orbit. A massive shape, dark and silent. It looked like a ship, but not one built by any species he knew. It was smooth, round, and the size of a moon. No engines, no lights. But Victor knew instantly it was human. Or at least, it used to be. He felt something pull at his thoughts again. A whisper with no sound. Keep going. And so, trembling but driven by something deeper than fear, he set course for the object because he now understood this place was not abandoned. It was a test. And the humans, whatever they had become, were watching. The giant object floated quietly above the ruined planet. It didn't move, didn't spin, didn't send signals. But Victor couldn't look away. It wasn't shaped like a normal ship. It looked more like a moon, smooth and silver, with patterns carved into its surface, glowing softly like veins of light under skin. He didn't know how, but he was sure this was made by humans, or maybe made of them. He moved the curiosity closer, slowly, carefully. His ship didn't get blocked, didn't get scanned. Not even a warning beep came from the floating object. It just waited, silent and still, as if expecting him when he reached within. 1 kilometer, his ship stopped moving, not by his hand. The controls froze again, But this time, they didn't shake or flash. They simply paused, like the ship itself had gone to sleep. Then a new voice filled the cabin. Soft, calm, but clear. "Why? Are you still here?" Victor jumped to his feet, spinning around. But the voice wasn't coming from any speaker. It was inside his mind again. He shouted back, "I want to understand. I want to know what happened to you." The voice paused, then spoke again. Slower. "No. One comes here with peace in their heart." "I do," Victor said, his voice shaking. "I just want the truth." There was silence for a long moment. Then something changed on the ship's screen. A circle of symbols appeared, not in human or alien language, but something new. Something that felt ancient and alive. It glowed gently, and the ship began to move forward again, this time by itself. He watched through the window as the silver object opened right in front of him. A doorway forming with no noise, no fire, just soft light peeling away like mist. The curiosity entered the structure, swallowed by the calm glow. Inside was nothing like Victor expected. There were no metal walls, no blinking lights, no engines or weapons, just space. A quiet, endless space filled with floating shapes, lights, and long pathways that looked like glass bridges hanging in the stars. His ship hovered in place, then slowly settled on a platform made of light. Then came the figure. It didn't walk, it floated, a humanoid shape, tall, dressed in white robes that flowed like water, its face hidden under a smooth silver mask. The voice returned. "Your kind calls us gone," it said. "But we are not," Victor asked. "Then what are you?" The figure raised a hand and pointed toward the endless lights. "We were human," it said, "until fear changed us. It explained long ago, after centuries of wars, betrayal, and broken trust from other species. Humans made a choice. They stopped trying to control the galaxy. Instead, they turned inward, began changing themselves. Not with weapons, but with thought, with mind, with light. They left behind flesh, bone, and even time. They became something more. Not gods, not ghosts, just..." Beyond, Victor stood frozen, struggling to understand. "You punish anyone who enters your space," he said. "Why?" "We don't punish," the voice said. "We protect the silence." He didn't know what that meant. The figure moved closer, slowly, until it stood right in front of him. "You are the first in many years," it said, "who did not come with weapons or lies. You may go deeper." The floor beneath him turned to glass, revealing another chamber far below, filled with glowing orbs, each one holding something memories. Maybe people, maybe both. "You may stay," the voice offered. "You may learn what we are, what we became." Victor's mouth went dry, his heart raced. Part of him wanted to run, escape, forget this place forever. But a stronger part wanted to know, to see what lay beyond the old fears and stories. He said quietly, "I want to understand." The figure nodded. Suddenly, the walls changed, showing him images, flashes of Earth, of old cities, of people laughing and crying, then of destruction, of alien fleets, betrayals, burning colonies, screams in the dark, then peace. Humans pulling away, building machines of thought, floating into silence, all of it in seconds. But it felt like years inside his mind. When the images faded, Victor was on his knees, gasping, his nose bleeding slightly. "You see now," the voice said. "What the galaxy forgot. We did not disappear. We evolved." He looked up at the figure, eyes full of fear and wonder. "What happens to me now?" he asked. The figure looked at him silently, then spoke. "You may leave. With knowledge," it said, "but your mind is no longer the same. You are touched. You will hear the silence now, always." Then everything went white. When Victor woke up, he was back on his ship, drifting outside the silver object. The doorway was gone. His ship's systems were fully working again better than before. But something was different. His hands moved faster. His thoughts were sharper. He could feel signals in the air, like a quiet hum of invisible voices just beyond hearing. He touched the console, and it responded before he gave commands. He knew, deep down, that he had changed, and that the humans, if that's what they still were, had let him go. But not untouched. They had marked him. They had given him a message, one that would shake the galaxy when he returned. Victor floated alone in space. His ship was quiet, calm, and fully repaired. But something inside him was not the same anymore. He looked down at his hands. They looked normal. But he could feel things: energy, motion, data flowing in the air like invisible waves. He didn't know how to explain it. His thoughts moved faster. His memory felt clearer. And the hum of the ship now felt like a heartbeat. Like it was alive. The silent object behind him had closed. Sealed shut as if it had never opened. It just hung there in space, huge and still. Like a moon that didn't belong to any world. Victor checked his ship's logs. Something strange appeared. He had only been gone for 2 days. But the ship said he had been inside for 3 weeks. His food supplies were untouched, fuel unchanged. And yet his mind felt like it had lived 100 lifetimes. He wanted to rest, but something pulled at him. A new location appeared on his star. Map marked in soft blue light. He didn't put it there. The ship didn't either. It was sent to him by them, without thinking, without fear. He set course and followed it. The journey took only hours, but the stars around him began to look stranger. Their light flickered softly like candles in the dark. And the further he went, the less real the space around him felt. Like he was drifting into a dream, finally. He arrived at a system that didn't exist on any chart. A single planet orbited a quiet, cold sun. The planet was gray with sharp mountain ranges and deep canyons. Not a place for life, not a place for comfort, but floating above it, in high orbit, was something terrifying. A human colony, abandoned but still active. It looked like it had been built hundreds, maybe thousands of years ago, but the lights were still on. Power still ran through it. And defense systems still scanned the air, ready to fire if needed. Victor approached carefully, sure if he was welcome, but the defense systems didn't attack. They blinked once, then turned away. He was allowed in. He landed on the outer deck of the main tower, stepped out of his ship, and walked into the dark hallways of a place no one had seen in generations. Inside, the colony was beautiful and terrifying. It wasn't like normal human buildings. It was quiet. Built with glowing metal and smooth shapes. Walls that shifted slowly, as if breathing. Doors that opened without sound, reacting to his presence like they remembered him. Old screens turned on as he walked by, showing moments from history: human families working, soldiers training, children playing in fields that no longer existed. And then, the attack. An old recording showed alien ships attacking the colony long ago. Missiles flying, fire everywhere. But then it cut to silence. The attackers didn't win. The recording showed their ships floating dead in space, perfectly intact, but shut down like toys without batteries. No weapon had fired back. No explosion, just silence. A soft white light had filled the sky, and everything stopped. The colony survived, but the people inside had changed. Their faces grew distant, calm, and their eyes began to glow faintly with blue light. They no longer needed tools, no longer needed shields. They became the silence. Victor walked deeper into the heart of the colony. He found a control room full of crystal consoles and strange energy flowing like liquid in tubes. And there, standing in the center of the room, was a cryopod. Inside was a woman. Human. She was frozen. Her body still, but her eyes were open. They stared straight at him. And then she blinked. Victor stepped back in shock. The pod opened with a soft hiss, and she sat up without speaking, as if she had been awake the whole time. Her voice was soft, kind, but powerful. "You're the first visitor in a very long time," she said. Victor asked, "Are you alive?" She smiled, "Yes, but not as you understand it." She told him her name was Commander Elise Varda. Once a leader of the colony, once fully human, but now something more. She explained what had happened. The attackers had come, trying to steal human technology, break through their systems, destroy what they feared. But they didn't understand what the humans had become. "We had no need to fight," she said. "We simply stopped the battle." Victor asked how that was possible. She replied, "When you learn to shape time and memory, when you speak not to bodies but to thoughts, war becomes unnecessary." She looked at him carefully. "You were touched by them," she said. "You carry the signal now." Victor nodded, still confused. Still overwhelmed, Elise stood. Her body glowed faintly now, not with heat, but with data. He could feel it in the air around her, like a soft field of energy. She placed her hand on a console and opened another recording. This time it showed other alien leaders, ones Victor recognized. Council members, kings, warlords, each of them had once entered human space. None of them returned, but their thoughts had been preserved here, not as prisoners, but as echoes, as proof. They came with fear, with hate, Elise said. They saw power, and they wanted control, but you came with questions. Victor looked around the glowing room, at the walls that remembered, at the systems that had waited quietly for centuries. "What do you want from me?" he asked. Elise smiled again. "To carry the truth back," she said, "and to warn them. If they try again, there will be no second chance." Victor understood. This place wasn't just a colony. It was a message, and he was now the one who had to deliver it. Victor sat alone in the control room, surrounded by lights that moved like living things. Everything felt calm, but his heart was racing. Commander Elise stood beside him, not blinking, not breathing like a normal person, yet she looked peaceful, not cold, not angry, just patient. She had been asleep for years, maybe centuries, but her mind was awake the entire time, watching, listening, waiting. Victor asked quietly, "Why did you freeze yourself?" Elise turned to him. "Because the others left." She explained that the colony was once filled with thousands of humans, engineers, scientists, families, soldiers. They had built this place after the retreat, hoping to live far from war, far from fear, but when the attack came, everything changed. She said the enemy ships never touched the surface, never even reached the walls. They stopped moving mid-flight, Elise said, as if time paused for them. Victor asked how that was possible. How any species could control time itself. Elise smiled gently. "We didn't learn to control time," she said. "We stopped needing it." He didn't understand at first, so she showed him. She raised her hand, and the walls shifted again, glowing softly as a large image appeared. It showed a human sitting in a room, meditating, and then suddenly that person disappeared, not with light or sound. Just vanished, like they had stepped out of reality. They moved into the flow, Elise said, a place between thought and space. Humans had stopped evolving through machines. They had started evolving through mind and memory. They learned to transfer their awareness into something larger, something unseen, a network made of light, thought, and silence. The galaxy thought humans had hidden from fear, but in truth, they had become the fear. Not through weapons, not through violence, but by stepping into a place where no one could follow. Victor whispered, "So, you're no longer human." Elise paused, then nodded. "We are what comes after human," she said. "But we still remember who we were," he asked. "Then why stay here, frozen, watching from the shadows?" Her voice grew softer, because someone had to remember. The pain, Elise chose to remain in her body in the colony, while the others moved into the flow. She stayed behind to watch, to greet, and to protect. She watched hundreds of ships enter human space over the years. Some came with greed, some came with fear, and all of them were offered the same choice: leave or be changed. They didn't listen. She said, "So we silenced them, Victor." Felt cold inside, not from hate, not from anger, but from the truth. The humans hadn't vanished. They had outgrown the galaxy. And now they were guarding their silence like a sacred flame. Elise stepped forward, holding out a small crystal. It floated between her hands, glowing with slow pulses like a beating heart. "This holds a memory," she said, "one you must carry." Back, Victor hesitated. What if the council doesn't believe me? Elise tilted her head. "Then they will forget," she said, "until they are reminded." He reached out and took the crystal. The moment his fingers touched it, images rushed into his mind: memories, emotions, sounds, pain, joy, loss, hope. He saw Earth from orbit. He saw fire raining over cities. He saw humans helping dying species, giving food to enemies, saving lives with no reward. He saw betrayal, then silence, and then peace, so deep, so full that it made him cry when the images faded. He stood, shaking tears on his cheeks. He understood now. This wasn't about revenge. It was about protection, about never letting anyone take away peace again, not with ships, not with words, not even with kindness that came too late. Elise walked him back to his ship, the halls glowing behind her with soft white light. She didn't say goodbye. She simply smiled and turned away, her body fading into mist as she stepped into the flow. Becoming light once again, Victor launched. From the colony, he looked back only once. The towers shimmered, then disappeared, cloaked from view, hidden from every scanner, as if they were never there. He flew in silence for hours. The stars around him felt distant, like he was still floating inside a dream. But his mind was sharper now. He could hear things, small whispers in the background. Of space, tiny hums of signal, emotions flowing through the vacuum like threads of music. The flow, he was not part of it, not fully, but it had touched him, and now he would never be the same. His ship moved faster than it ever had before, responding to his thoughts before his hands could move. The systems were upgraded beyond anything the council knew. He was still himself, but also more. He knew what he had to do. When he reached the edge of human space again, the red border blinked on his map, a warning. The same one that had scared so many before, but now he smiled at it, because behind that line there was no monster, only silence, and silence was sacred. The stars looked normal again, bright, steady, and calm. But Victor knew better now. He wasn't just flying through space. He was flying through something that watched, something that remembered, something that chose silence over destruction. When he crossed the border back into known space, nothing stopped him. No signal, no voice, no warning. They let him leave. But he didn't feel like a visitor anymore. He felt like someone who had been let into a sacred temple and told never to speak its name unless he had to. Victor didn't head home right away. He took a slow path through nearby sectors, visiting old outposts, small listening stations, and council checkpoints. Everywhere he went, he heard the same thing: fear. People still whispered about human space, calling it cursed, haunted, forbidden. Some believed humans were long dead. Some believed monsters lived there now. Others thought humans had simply hidden after losing a great war. No one knew the truth. No one had returned to tell it until now. Victor landed at the Grand Council Station, the heart of the Galactic Alliance, where over 50 species lived, governed and argued under the same roof. When his ship landed, he was met by guards and scanners. They searched him, scanned him, and questioned him for hours. His appearance hadn't changed, but his presence had. He felt calmer, sharper, stronger, like his thoughts were 2 steps ahead of theirs. Finally, he stood before the council chamber, the same chamber where the red border had been declared. Now they looked at him with wide eyes and tense shoulders. He placed the crystal Elise gave him onto the central table. It hovered above the surface and began to glow. Before anyone could speak, it activated, the room went dark. Then filled with sound, not words, but memories, feelings, images of Earth, of loss of hope, of betrayal, images of silence and peace that no one could understand until they felt it themselves. The council fell silent. Some closed their eyes. Some covered their faces. Some wept quietly when the crystal dimmed and returned. To the table, no one moved. Finally, the chairman spoke, his voice quiet and shaken. "Is this real?" he asked. Victor nodded. Yes. A tall warrior from the Theric Empire stood and growled. "You could have been killed, or worse. I was changed," Victor replied, "but not harmed." Another counselor asked, "Why show us this?" Victor looked around the room, "Because now you understand what we almost destroyed." He walked slowly in front of them all. "You think the humans disappeared because they were afraid?" he said. "But that's not true. They saw the galaxy for what it was, full of war, greed, betrayal, so they left. Not to hide, but to grow." He paused, letting the silence fill the room. "They didn't build weapons," he said. "They built peace. But not the kind you speak of in treaties. They built a peace so deep, so powerful, that they will destroy anything that threatens its heaven, if it's you." A cold wave passed through the room. Some counselors sat back in fear. Others leaned forward. Curious, the chairman asked, "What should we do?" Victor replied, "Nothing. Do not send ships," he said. "Do not test the border again. Let them be. And maybe, one day, they will return. But only when we are ready." He left the crystal behind as proof as he walked out of the chamber. He felt the weight of 1,000 thoughts pressing against him, not from the council, but from far away, from the flow, from them. He knew they were listening, watching through him, not to control, not to threaten, but to remind the galaxy of a truth. It had forgotten, power is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet, silent, and unshakable that night. Messages flew across the stars. The council sent new orders. The red border would stay in place, untouched, respected, and Victor. He returned to his home, but he was not the same man. He could still hear whispers in the wind. He could still feel patterns in the stars. He became a teacher, a quiet one, who told stories of what he saw, but only to those who truly wanted to understand. And every so often, when the night was especially still, he would see a soft light in the sky, moving where no ship should be. He would smile because he knew they were still there, the humans, or whatever they had become, guarding their silence, not with weapons, but with memory. And no one dared to break it again. Years passed, the galaxy slowly moved on. But the red line across every star map never faded. It stayed bright and clear, a warning written in light. Do not enter human space. The stories continued to grow. Pilots spoke in quiet voices about lights that followed their ships near the border. Miners reported hearing music in empty asteroid fields near the edge of the silent zone. Traders swore they saw old human satellites drift past them, turned on, scanning, watching. No one dared to go in. And yet, no one could stop thinking about what lay beyond that silence. The council changed too. New laws were passed. Peace became more important than ever. Some said it was because of fear. Others believed it was respect. But deep down, everyone knew the truth. They had looked into something older, deeper, more powerful than anything in the known galaxy, and they didn't want to wake it again. Victor became a legend. Some said he was no longer truly alien, that his eyes glowed faintly in the dark, that machines obeyed him without touch, that he could hear thoughts no one spoke. He never confirmed or denied any of it. He lived simply, quietly. In a small observatory on a cold moon, far from politics, far from war, but sometimes young explorers would visit him. They would ask, "What did you see?" And Victor would smile gently. He never gave a straight answer. Instead, he would ask them a question. "What would you do?" he'd say, "if you met a species that could erase a fleet?" With a thought, but chose not to. Most of them never had an answer, and Victor liked it that way. Then, one evening, as the stars turned slow in the black sky, something changed. A new signal appeared. Not loud, not urgent. Just a soft pulse, steady and clear. It came from the edge of human space. Every listening station picked it up at once. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a threat. It was a message. One sentence. "We remember." The council gathered again. Older now, wiser, but still unsure. What did it mean? Was it a test? Was it a gift? Victor was called to speak, though he hadn't set foot in the council hall in many years. He stood before them, calm and still. "They know we're listening," he said. "And they want us to know they haven't forgotten," the chairman asked. "Forgotten what?" Victor looked up at the stars through the dome ceiling. "Everything," he said. "What we did, what we almost destroyed, and what we still could become." One counselor whispered, "Are they watching us now?" Victor didn't answer directly. Instead, he said, "They never stopped." Later that night, in the deep silence of space, a new light appeared above the red border. It wasn't a ship. It was something else, something vast, glowing faintly. Shaped like a ring of thought, not metal. It didn't move forward. It didn't speak again. It just stayed there, hovering peacefully, a reminder to the galaxy, a symbol of what waited in the quiet beyond. People began calling it the Guardian Light. Some worshipped it, some feared it, but no one touched it. No ship dared fly near it, because now the galaxy understood something powerful. Human space was not just empty land on a map, it was a promise, a place where pain was buried deep, where peace was guarded, not with war, but with memory. And memory never sleeps. In time, stories turned into legends. Children were taught never to cross the line, not because monsters lived there, but because they didn't want to lose themselves in the silence. A silence that held more than darkness. It held truth, and one day, maybe far in the future, when the galaxy was truly ready to listen, the humans would speak again, but until then, they watched, not with eyes, but with light. And the stars themselves seemed to blink a little slower near their border, as if holding their breath because no species enters human space. Not anymore. And now, finally, the galaxy understands why.